Welcome to an episode of the Bonafide, where we're going over a commentary and explanation of Sahih Muslim. This is going to be the last episode recording of this session, of this time, so you can consider this the end of the season, so to speak. And I'm thinking in the future when we do this, we'll have multiple seasons, right? In each season, we'll have like a theme of sorts. Maybe each season we explore a different book.
Yeah.
Makes
sense,
right?
That would be a great idea. Absolutely.
So, like this season, we're covering the book of marriage. Or is there a book of jinn?
No, there's no book of jinn.
No?
That would be interesting.
That would be very interesting. And there's no book of Quran either.
It's an interesting discussion.
Okay.
There is a kitab, a chapter, Fada'il al-Quran, within the chapter on the travelers.
Okay.
Whereas in Bukhari, you have a separate chapter.
So it's a book of traveling.
The prayer of the traveler.
The prayer of the traveler.
Yeah. Salat al-Musafir.
Wait, how? Oh, like the
how
actual.
They pray.
Oh, how?
Like
okay.
the fact that you pray 2 rakats instead of 4. Do you combine? Do you not?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a book of heaven and hell?
There is.
Okay. Is that separate or together?
This is the interesting thing about Muslim. Depending on the publication that you're using and the translation, perhaps some are, for example, you'll find with every publication that comes out, they're attempting to either reorganize or perfect something that they found would be easier for the audiences, any Western audience or in a different language, right? So you have, for example, a chapter describing the Day of Judgment, Paradise, and Hellfire.
Sure.
Then you have a chapter on Paradise.
Yeah.
Right? But you could have taken those same ahadith and put them in the chapter on Paradise.
Okay.
They're 2 different chapters.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's very interesting. I believe there are some perhaps potential changes or reorganizations that can be made.
It would be interesting to go back in time and ask Imam Muslims, like, yeah, what were you thinking about this one?
It'd be interesting because a lot of times we might question things, and then if you actually had the chance to ask a scholar, you find he has a very valid response. You're like,
really?
Wow, I didn't even think about that.
Okay.
So it's just, sometimes it's our ignorance. Sometimes
but the reasoning is not necessarily communicated.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and you can find proofs of this from narrations in which somebody questions a scholar about something that we're like, yeah, that's a great question. I would have asked the same thing. But then you see his response, you're like, oh, that makes sense.
Okay.
So it just shows us how little we know. But at the same time, this doesn't mean that everything is, infallible.
Right.
Perhaps with regards to the way we have organization in books and stuff like that.
It could also be that the organization that they did what made sense for the situation and time,
Absolutely.
but could be optimized better for our situation and time.
Absolutely.
Okay, got
It's
it.
very possible.
So, speak of hellfire and heaven and hereafter and things like that, let's cover that in this one. You got something for us?
One of my favorite hadith. This is one of my favorite hadith because I think it gives people hope.
Okay.
It also allows people to endure whatever hardships they go through.
Sure.
Whatever pain, suffering. It allows them to, I guess, be more patient.
Okay.
I'll mention actually a part of this hadith. And for those people who attend my lectures frequently, they know that I love to quote this hadith because it always gives hope. It doesn't matter who you are. So to begin basically halfway through the hadith about the part that is crucial, pertinent to this discussion, I would say it starts with the translation of the hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ is saying, and then the person who suffered the most in this world, the most misery, the most pain, the most hardship, is brought forth on the Day of Judgment and dipped 1 dip into paradise. This is the only person we know that's dipped into Jannah. Okay. We have no other narrations about people like this. Why? Because you enter Jannah, you never leave, right? And we assume this person who's dipped into Jannah, they're removed just for our lesson through this hadith, but they are of the people of Jannah, as the hadith says. Imagine all the trauma, all the hardships he goes through, all the baggage you might carry from pain in this life. He's dipped 1 dip into paradise, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks him, O son of Adam, have you experienced any misery? Have you experienced any distress? Imagine all the trauma. You'd be like, yes, I've experienced so much, but he's just been dipped into paradise. His response, no, Ya Allah, I have never experienced any misery. I have never experienced any hardship. And the hadith ends there. The commentary, if you read some of the different views, you see, for example, that this hadith gives so much hope. Why? The whole idea of suffering, even like the discussions on the problem, the so-called problem of suffering, all of that is erased with 1 step into paradise. Okay. So you might, if somebody goes through hardships for 150 years or 1,000 years in this world, that 1 step, that first step into paradise makes all of it worth it, right? But throwing paradise away for a few years of maybe happiness, maybe luxury, maybe relaxation, this life does not guarantee that, is basically like you throwing away the entire ocean for a few drops of water. Because the Prophet ﷺ said, the comparison of this life to the next life, it's as if one of you would take his finger, dip it into the ocean, let him then see how much water he retains. I usually do this activity in front of people very quickly, this demonstration, and it's usually 2 or 3 drops of water. Can you imagine taking 3 drops of water and saying, I don't want the ocean, I only want 3 drops? You'll be like, you're insane. So imagine taking crumbs, leaving out the entire kingdom, right? Taking a few drops, leaving out the entire ocean. So the Prophet ﷺ, through this hadith, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us, through the Prophet ﷺ, hope, solace, endure, be patient, it will be worth it. And this is something, when you read the Quran, when you study the authentic hadith, you find that it's a common theme that allows people to move forward. If there was no justice and there was no mercy and there was no reward and there was no punishment, there were no consequences, there's no happiness, there's no eternal bliss, it makes it more difficult to get through things for many people.
Okay.
Right? So what allows people usually to get through hardship in general, Muslims and non-Muslims, is knowing that there's relief coming up. Right? So the relief of paradise, there's nothing like it. But if you live this life expecting it to be paradise, you will always be disappointed. Because this life is not meant to be a paradise. It's not meant to be a relaxation place. Right? There is going to be suffering, there will be hardship. But all of it is worth it if you are patient for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in that the reward will erase everything of this world in terms of pain.
Okay.
And we ask Allah to make us of those who are constantly patient and looking forward to that.
I mean, the reverse can also be implied for the one who doesn't make it to paradise.
Okay, so you asked me for something about hope. I can share the first part of the hadith, that the person who enjoys all the, let's say, desires and luxuries of this world, but rejects the clear truth, and they are of the people who are held accountable because they went through all those conditions.
Right.
They rejected
every
the truth.
Every
opportunity, and they were arrogant, stubborn, whatever it may be. They rejected the truth so many times.
Yeah.
Imagine this person, they enjoyed every luxury in this world, and they had a life of ease, as the hadith says. So they had basically everything they needed of this life. But they rejected the truth. They're meant for hellfire now because of what they've done, what they've earned. So when they are dipped into hellfire, and as we know, this is the only person dipped into hellfire, this person is also asked, have you ever experienced anything good? Have you ever basically experienced any comfort or material blessing? And this person says, no, ya Allah, I have never experienced any of those things. So this shows us that no matter how many years you have in this life of happiness and blissfulness and luxury and ease and comfort, if it doesn't get you to paradise in the next life, it'll all be forgotten in that one dip. And as we know,
much less an eternity in it.
Exactly. As we know, paradise and hellfire, it's eternal.
Yeah.
So we're not talking about one dip here. Take one step and see how it is. It erases everything.
This is interesting because one of the things that we found when in one of Sheikh Walid's classes where we were looking at, I think it was Rays of Faith, where we were looking at the theology of other faiths, and especially even in Judaism, they're like, okay, well, we would go to hellfire for a little bit of time. Even in that situation.
If anybody here has experienced getting burnt by an actual fire, they wouldn't say that. No. Right? So
I think the worst. What's the worst burn that you've ever had?
Allahu A'lam. I don't know. That's a great question. I don't remember actually ever touching fire, unless I don't remember.
Because my worst experience in feeling a burn wasn't necessarily fire.
Okay.
It was a steam burn.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So the thing was, you have those water boilers, those kettles, and there's steam coming out. You don't see the steam. Yeah. And for whatever reason, I reached over it. Right, to grab I think it was honey or the tea bag that was in the counter. And this entire area just, you can even still see the marks, right? The entire area just got burnt.
Wow.
And I just remember it was just excruciating pain. And so I didn't have anything with me at the time to do. So I'd run cold water over it. Now, the sensation of water running over the skin would I guess, reduce the ordeal of the pain of the burning sensation. But as soon as I turned the water off, it would I felt like it would ignite on fire, but it's nothing burning there. Ultimately, I think it was a 2nd-degree burn. Wow. Where the skin just kind of started peeling off and stuff later. It was actually fascinating. Just one of the miracles of how our body's designed is that the thing boils up. There's the plasma. The body extracts the plasma from the blood vessels that are damaged into that pocket while the body then sends whatever healing mechanisms there to get itself healed, and the plasma is then reinserted back in as part of the healing process. But it was painful, man.
Yeah.
It's just like I can still remember how painful it was. Like usually you get hurt, and this is one of the one of the miracles of watching children as they are learning to walk, for example. Like they might walk and bump their head, and then they might cry in the moment, but then momentarily afterwards, like they'll get up because they forgot the pain. And I think as adults, we tend to hold on to the memory of pain longer and longer as time passes. And I think this is also the case with relationships, right? People get hurt in relationships, and so they don't tend to move on because they're holding on to the memory of the pain that existed. But I just remember just like even the burnt. It was only a few years ago, but I can still remember just and even now, it's just like I see the water boiler and kettle, like don't go near it, especially when it's on. Like don't like it's on. Okay, don't touch it. Triggers
something.
Yeah.
Memories, flashbacks. I think most people that I've had this discussion with about being burnt by something. Most people tend to remember like the feeling. That feeling. They don't forget. With other types of pain, you might forget.
Yeah.
Right?
Like look, I've chipped a bone. I've sprained ankles. Like I've busted up nerves. But like I don't remember the pain of those. But this.
Yeah. As soon as the water's off, you feel
like
subhanAllah. Imagine though somebody's touching fire for like 30 seconds. It's burnt for sure, right?
Yeah.
Imagine 10 seconds.
If your hand's in fire.
So how can someone say I'll go through it for a day? And the hellfire, as we know, is 69 times hotter or 70 times hotter, right?
Well, that term 70 times is like it means like it's so much hotter, right?
Yeah, and
it's not even.
Well, with the Sahaba, when they heard that, they said, "Ya Rasulullah, it's enough as it is," meaning the fire is already hot as it is. And the Prophet ﷺ said 69 equal portions will be added to the fire as we know it, meaning it's 70 times hotter than the fire of this world. We don't even know what that's like. Right? Because you can't handle staying in fire in this world. We can't even get close to it.
I mean, the only thing you can do with fire is like just pass your hand through it.
Right. So
and that too if it's like a candle or something small, right? Or maybe even like
it's not
a campfire. Forget a bonfire. Heck, you can feel the bonfire just like radiating on you.
Feet away.
Yeah.
So it's crazy for someone to say, I don't mind going there for a day or two, and then I'll go to paradise.
Yeah.
Usually that attitude, actually in general, that attitude means that person's probably not going to do the actions of the humility, the traits of the people of paradise of humility.
I mean, it's a loser mentality,
right?
It's like I've heard about like and maybe I don't know if it's like this in Jordan or in other parts of the country, but there are certain people who are allegedly in a situation where they're seeking knowledge in the subcontinent region. And sometimes people joke about how, oh, well, if I flunk out of classes, that's okay. I'll go to these graves and I'll ask for money there.
Wow.
Right? Like you're here in an institution of learning, and then this is the attitude that you have.
Yeah, raise your standards.
Yeah.
Raise your standards, absolutely. This hadith is a reminder. Everything of this world is temporary.
Yeah.
This life has its purpose. But if you don't believe in that purpose, you don't live by that purpose, you don't think about it every day, then all the disappointments of this life and the enjoyments of this life, the desires, the temptations, these things will affect you more when you forget where you're really going.
So essentially the idea here is endure. Pain is temporary.
Be patient because it'll be worth it. You know, sometimes forget the idea of paradise, but even in this world, where the reward for anything is much less.
Endurance pays off.
Endurance pays off. Imagine, when you go through the hardship and then finally you get, let's say, the success, the degree, the prize, right? You're like, wow, I'm so happy I made it here. It was so worth it. It was difficult, but it was worth it.
You know what's interesting? Just on the subject alone, it's like you hear about from the perspective, and I remember even looking back at it when I was in high school. Right, man, I got to go through 10 years of educational study before I could, like, depending on what career path I take. Like, you look at a doctor or a lawyer, they're going to be spending the next 10 plus years educating themselves. Whereas, like, oh, what if I would just get an associate's degree or maybe a bachelor's degree? We're just going to start working now, make some money. But what's interesting is those people, like, now, past 30, some of those colleagues I'm looking at are coming out of that. And some of them are now making some really good money. And they're like, I don't feel old. Like now I feel like I'm young and I can enjoy the success and the fruits of the success that I've had. Now, granted, maybe a 15-year-old looking at a 35-year-old might be like, yo, you're old, right? Or looking at a 40-year-old, you're old. But like the 35, 40-year-old be looking back like, well, it doesn't feel old.
You'll be here in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
SubhanAllah, that's true. That's very true. A
So-
lot of times when people reach that achievement, that accomplishment, they're like, you know what, it was worth it.
Yeah.
It was worth the effort. It was worth the hard work, the times in which they suffered, struggled. Alhamdulillah.
So the idea here is if you have a long, allegedly seemingly long journey ahead of you, and there are ordeals and challenges in the path, then go for it, because it'll be worth it.
It will all be worth it. For example, in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us that the people of Jannah, when they enter with their ancestors who were righteous, their spouse if they were righteous, their descendants if they were righteous. Imagine you're entering with all these people into Jannah, all with one heart. You're all happy. You're all taking those first steps into Jannah. So many people at once, right? And it's not like a crowd like, Black Friday, right? These are people entering paradise eternally.
Yeah.
They're so in tune with knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, finally making it there, right? So imagine they're all entering Jannah, and as the ayah continues, وَالْمَلَائِكَةُ يَدْخُلُونَ عَلَيْهِمْ مِنْ كُلِّ بَابٍ. The angels come to them from every gate, meaning they come to them surrounding them. So imagine you're in Jannah. Imagine the scenario. You're chilling, you're having fun, you're enjoying paradise. You're like, I finally made it. This is it. This was the purpose of my existence. And then the angels start surrounding you from every gate, you and your reunion or your family or your friends, saying what? سَلَامٌ عَلَيْكُمْ بِمَا صَبَرْتُمْ فَنِعْمَ عُقْبَى الدَّارِ. Peace be upon you because of what you were patient with, because of what you endured in the last life. Meaning it was worth it. And this is the greatest of homes, meaning there's no alternative. Right? So imagine they're hearing this from the angels that you've passed the test. Salamun alaykum tibtum. You have done well in another ayah. Right? Peace be upon you. You have done well. This is what you earned. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Insan, وَجَزَاهُمْ بِمَا صَبَرُوا جَنَّةً وَحَرِيرًا. The reward for what they endured of patience in this life is paradise and the silk garments.
Okay.
Right? So on and so forth. If you look in the Quran, you find so much hope.
Yeah.
So much solace, so much optimism, so many reasons for us to keep moving forward. Yes, it's the short-term pain, but the long-term treasure, the long-term success. And when you study, impulse in general and how people make decisions, you find that those who are self-disciplined in the now, they are always happier and more successful in the future. Like the Marshmallow Experiment.
Marshmallow?
There's a famous Stanford
one,
experiment.
If you choose to eat the marshmallow now versus wait for it?
Well, it was one marshmallow now or one cookie now and then two after 15 minutes. But it's up to you. And you can distract yourself with things in the room, right?
Okay.
It was children. They followed up with them again after a few years. And they found that when they got to high school, those who were patient and waited 15 minutes for the second one, for the greater prize, they ended up being more successful in school, in fitness, in their health, which is interesting. And I'm sure you can relate to it because basically they were able to control themselves.
It's interesting you mentioned the whole fitness factor because bodies are biological machines, right? There's even like a timetable for every facet of self-improvement level. Our blood replaces itself every 90 to 110 days, right? You want to see the effect of a diet on you. You got to be not a week, not a month.
It's a lifestyle.
But like at least give yourself 3 to 4 months, right? To see the effects of your diet and exercise. In addition to that, you talk about muscular and physical restructuring of your body, right? Your muscle cells replace themselves every 2 years, right? So like if you want to get big, get swole, build some booty and get some gains, essentially, as they say, then dedicate 2 years. Then even myofascial tissue, flexibility and mobility and things like that, 7 months. Our bone structure, 10 years, right? But I don't think people give themselves those timetables to dedicate themselves to, like you said, a lifestyle.
In general, that self-discipline is what leads to more success, happiness even, because you end up seeing the fruits of all of these results of patience. Right. So in Islam, it's the same way. Long-term success, right? There is success in this world. We aim for it. But that self-discipline, that patience that you're enduring in this life is worth every moment in the next life.
Sure.
It's worth it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us patient.
Cool. And you usually end with something, and I'm going to hold you to the explanation of the meaning of that.
We usually end with the dua that the Prophet ﷺ ended the gatherings of religiosity with, and every gathering generally. Subhanaka
Is it a
Allahumma.
gathering of religiosity or a gathering of spiritual development?
Both.
Okay,
They could be
because
both.
religiosity sounds so like
Formal.
not even formal, but so surface level, so vain.
It could be. I guess it's subjective.
Because all it is just rituals.
It could be.
Okay.
It could also be because spiritual development is part of religiosity. Could be argued. So it's the umbrella.
Okay.
سبحانك اللهم بحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. So the dua,
let's break that down. So
Sure.
Subhanaka Allahumma. So glorified is Allah, right?
وبحمدك.
Wabihamdik, and He is worthy of praise and gratitude.
Okay. أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت.
And that we bear witness to the fact that none is worthy nor deserving of worship except He.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, but if you're saying it right, إلا أنت, you're speaking like
To
there's no,
you. So you're speaking
right.
to Allah, right?
Yes. أشهد أن لا إله
So
إلا
none
أنت.
is worthy nor deserving of worship except You.
أستغفرك.
And we seek refuge in. Or
أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. I seek forgiveness from you and I repent to you.
Okay, so I seek forgiveness and repent
To you.
to You. وَأَتُوبُ إِلَيْكَ. In You.
وأتوب إليك. And usually this dua, when the Prophet ﷺ says it, he would, according to other authentic reports, many of them, it would recite Surah Al-Asr.
Okay.
And that's maybe a discussion for another day because of the gems of Surah Al-Asr. But in general, the Sunnah.
Some scholars said that Surah Al-Asr contains the meaning of the entire Quran within itself.
I've not heard that wording. What I've
Okay.
heard was, as Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah said, that
Yeah.
if Surah Al-Asr was the only thing revealed to mankind, it would suffice as guidance.
Okay.
Why? Because you're reciting Surah Al-Asr, especially at the end of every gathering.
Right.
Wal Asr, Allah swearing by time. And
Right.
for us, what is
The
our
eroding and
existence?
exhaustive power of it.
Yeah, what is our existence other than the time between birth and death?
Sure.
Right. Every minute is a part of you that's leaving this
Yeah.
world. Inna al-insana lafi khusr. Mankind is in loss. Right. But we know Allah did not create us to be in loss.
Right.
There's no way. So there has to be a continuation or exception to the statement.
Okay.
إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, except those who believe. وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Believe, they do righteous deeds. They're combined together in the Quran more than 50 verses.
Okay.
It shows us the reality and the importance that, hey, you can't just say, I'm just a Muslim by name.
So it's not just
آمنوا
about
وعملوا
trusting in
الصالحات.
Allah and His promise
It's
and
not
things
just
like
about
that.
good manners. It's
Yeah.
not just about belief. Yes, that's the minimum, but there has to be action.
Okay.
آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق, and they advise one another with truth. وتواصوا بالصبر, and they advise with patience.
So it's the idea
We need
that
this
even if
formula.
you give truth to folks, they might not take it so kindly. So you got to be patient.
Gotta be
And you got to
patient.
endure through their misbehaviors.
And the more you do that, the more you follow that last formula,
Yeah.
belief, righteous deeds, advise with truth, advise with patience,
Yeah.
The closer you are to succeeding and moving away from the verse, إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ, mankind is in loss. So you would not be in loss because you're using that time, وَالْعَصْرِ, you're using that time for belief, for righteous deeds, for advising with truth and for advising with patience.
Sure.
And this is the objective of our creation. Right, to believe in Allah, do righteous deed, advise one another, focus on the Creator and the
So
creation.
this is how you pass through time.
This is how you pass through time.
Gotcha.
So the more you do that between the time of birth and death, the more success you'll have.
Gotcha. Okay.
سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك.
سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد
أشهد
أن لا إله إلا أنت
أستغفرك.
أستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم.
والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر.